Welcome to A Course in Business Miracles. This is Heather Dominic, creator of businessmiracles.com and founder and leader of the highly sensitive entrepreneur movement. Join me today for some genuine practical assistance and a business-altering and life-changing experience, a business miracle. This is A Course in Business Miracles, episode number 100, HSE Feature with highly sensitive leader and yoga instructor, Nikki Kourpias. Welcome to this Business Miracles HSE Feature episode. I am so happy to be featuring Nikki Kourpias as a member of the Business Miracles community and as a successful, highly sensitive entrepreneur and leader. Nikki, along with being a very valued member of the Business Miracles community, is a highly sensitive leader and yoga instructor. Her yoga story began about 8 years ago after having 3 kids in 4.5 years, stay home momming, and raising her family hundreds of miles from her own family. She needed stress relief. Yoga not only relieved the stress, Nikki started a new career midlife as a yoga instructor and now continues as a studio owner. Nikki is a welcoming, compassionate, non-judgmental yoga instructor, and her flows are thoughtfully sequenced. Nikki's studio, Aware Hot Yoga, is located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Listen in as I talk with highly sensitive leader and yoga instructor Nikki Kourpias to hear how before she joined the Business Miracles community and highly sensitive leadership training programs, she was struggling to find out what was wrong with her because of how she reacted differently to the world and those around her. After joining the program, she learned that being highly sensitive was a part of who she was and that she could actually harness that as a strength instead of viewing it as a weakness, and use her sensitive strengths to work through her resistances. As she did this, she was able to transform from yoga instructor to opening her own yoga studio. I can honestly say Nikki is deeply passionate and committed to her journey as a highly sensitive entrepreneur and leader, and I hope you thoroughly receive that passion when you listen in to our conversation today. Enjoy. Nikki, welcome to the Business Miracles podcast.
Thank you. Hello, Heather.
I am just really looking forward to this conversation together. I've always just felt like such a connection with you and such an investment in your highly sensitive entrepreneur and leadership journey, and am such a fan of what you're doing and creating in regards to Aware Hot Yoga. And the global pandemic of 2020 has thrown this whole different wrench into the launch of this business for you, for obvious reasons, but because, especially that it's an in-person business. So I just am always such an admirer of you and the way that you continue to show up. And so again, I'm just so looking forward to this conversation today. Let's start by just getting a frame of context, which is you are in the highly sensitive leadership training program. You've been in the Business Miracles community for about 3 years now, but I would love for you to share just a little bit about like when you and I first connected, and most importantly, about your experience with discovering what it meant to be highly sensitive as part of when you and I first connected. What was that like for you?
Oh, yeah. I first heard you on an Ali Brown podcast. And as I've been trying to set up my own business, I was kind of Googling. I didn't even know who Ali Brown was. Women, entrepreneurs, and I really liked her podcast. And then you were on one of the features. And my entire life, I always thought that there was something wrong with me. I mean, majorly wrong with me because I reacted differently. And I remember clearly standing in my kitchen one morning watching the Today Show. and they were doing a segment on adult ADD. And I looked at my then husband and I said, that's me. And I immediately, this was before I connected with you, but I immediately called someone in town to get tested. And I went in, got tested, and she was really kind. And she said, it's not ADD. She said, it's probably like borderline anxiety. And, I was kind of sad about that because I wanted somebody to label me so that I could know how to fix myself.
Right.
You came on the podcast with Allie Brown. You just described me to a T. And I immediately went to your website and I signed up for a year-long program after talking to one of the coaches. I didn't even go into the 6-month program. I was like, this is me. I need it. And here I am.
I'm so appreciative that you shared that, because I think for so many of us who are highly sensitive, when we don't even maybe know anything about high sensitivity, let alone what that actually means or how that actually is part of who we are and then therefore how we function in the world, we truly feel like there is something wrong with us. And because it isn't necessarily really talked about, in mainstream circles, you aren't the only one. You really just spoke to so many highly sensitives in their experience, which is looking for some kind of answer or definition or label, like you said, to try to help explain why we feel so different and why we process the world so different. I'm just so happy that we then did connect and you did really recognize yourself and your high sensitivity and have been, able to work with this in a positive way since then. So share just a little bit about, what difference has it made, for yourself personally, professionally, to understand that you're highly sensitive and to, engage in the training program and the work like we do, with Course in Business Miracles.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is that like you were saying, there's nothing wrong with me. And so I can operate from highly sensitive strengths, and I don't think of them as weaknesses anymore. And I literally will walk into a room or a meeting or get on a phone call with what we call an 80%er.
Yeah.
And I put this imaginary crown on my head. And I visualize the strengths in my mind, and I take a deep breath and I just go for it. And I think it has given me a whole lot of courage and confidence to know that I'm with a whole bunch of other people that react to the world the same way that I do.
Oh my gosh, I have chills running up and down my spine, Nikki. I mean, that was just such a beautiful description of how to really use the work that we do in highly sensitive leadership training program, and especially those 80%ers. Anybody who's listening to this podcast for the first time, the term 80%ers is just to reference those who are not highly sensitive, because of the highly sensitive research that shows that 20% of us in the world are highly sensitive. And I really hear you, Nikki, speaking to the power of community, which is so much about, who we are in Business Miracles. And again, the work that we do in the training program is the value of aligned community, because it's so important to remember that you're not the only one, because when it does come to 20% versus 80%, when you're out there in the world, it can really start to feel like you're the only one, but that's not the case. So I love also this image of putting on your crown. Share maybe an example of how you've put on that crown when it comes to, your business of launching Aware Yoga and what that's been like. Maybe first, actually, could you talk just a little bit about Aware Yoga and this endeavor that you've been engaged in and are really just getting ready to bring to the world? Let's start there, and then we'll get to the crown part. What is Aware Yoga? Bring us in.
Aware Yoga, I think I'll start with the name. I have 3 college-age kids now, but when they were younger, they were probably like 9 or 10, 12 in that age range. And I was trying to find desperately something to reduce my stress level. And I stumbled upon hot yoga, and I walked into a room. It was a 90-minute class. I immediately hated it, said, I'm getting out of here, rolled up my towel mat, grabbed my water bottle, and walked out of the room. And the instructor came out very nicely. And she said, Nikki, just come back in and sit down and finish the class. You don't even have to move. And the rest is history. I went back in, and when I walk into a hot room, I feel like I'm being just wrapped in a warm blanket. It is just, it's fabulous for me. And yoga itself, people keep coming back, and I think a lot of type A's come back because they feel fabulous, but they don't really understand why they feel fabulous. And it's because we're opening up all the energy centers in the body. Aware hot yoga, the name came from the fact that one of my first yoga teachers in a training told me that yoga is not about flexibility, it's about awareness. And from your awareness comes your strength, and from your strength comes your flexibility. And so those are all things that we talk about in Business Miracles. And that's kind of what I see is the flexibility, the strength, and the courage. Because before I knew that all of this stuff that I feel are strengths and not weaknesses, I think I kind of hid myself from the world.
Amazing. So when you put that crown on to deal with the 80 percenters as part of you being the founder of Aware Yoga, can you give an example of, the growth that you've experienced from your highly sensitive leadership training and being a member of Business Miracles, and how that supports you and doing what you need to do to launch this kind of business and to deal with so many others who, again, are of the 80%?
My top strength that I lead with, and that's also something that I learned in this program, my top two are empathy and ideation, and I think my third is creation. And I walk into a room or start dealing with people, and I try to come from my heart, which I think is what I've done my whole life, but I just didn't realize it was a good thing. And I take a lot of deep breaths, and I try to do deep listening to understand exactly what they're saying. And I recently put an ad on a website around here. I'm looking for an office manager. And in the description, I said, I need help. I need someone to help a creative open up a small business. And a woman immediately shot back, and she kind of laughed, and she said, I am, and she described herself as an 80%er, but she's always worked with people who were creatives and getting them the details up and off the table so that they can move forward with their empathy, my own empathy and creation and ideation.
Yes. That's so beautiful. And you're speaking so eloquently to, so many of the highly sensitive strengths that I talk about and teach about, in the programs, strengths such as empathy, strengths such as creativity, strengths such as deep listening. And it's so heartwarming and rewarding to me to hear how that's so front and center for you, because that is just so much of the core of the work that we do, which is, as highly sensitives, how to shift from that perception or perspective that who we are is less than, or how we operate as a weakness, to what we really truly have to offer in the form of strengths and superpowers. So I love hearing again that that's front and center for you, but also specifically how you use it. And I really like this piece about recognizing that it's not, 20 percenters versus 80 percenters, but that 80 percenters are really valuable for us in the same way that we're valuable for them. And it's really about when we can work harmoniously in partnership by recognizing those different strengths, which it sounds like is, maybe a possibility with this potential team member for you. So that is really cool and exciting. I'd love for you to now talk about, in addition to the strengths, there's so many teachings, right, that we have as part of the leadership training program and Business Miracles. Is there maybe one, if we can narrow it down to one or a couple, that really stand out to you as being like most impactful for you?
I think actually it still holds true today, but especially in the beginning when I was working with you, the trainings on resistance and getting myself out of resistance and using the tools you offer to do that. And so I've learned a lot of things in my life, but the tools are very simple. The resistance has been strong in my life all along. And I think it was because of how I reacted to the world. But I know that once I can get up and manage my energy, first thing in the morning, throughout the day, I can present myself exactly as I want to be presented.
Yeah, that is really, that's huge, right? Because if we're operating the world from resistance versus operating in the world from not resistance, or we would reference resilience, right? In the teaching, it's like, wow, totally two different experiences. How has that impacted you? Like, is there something maybe that you've been able to create or accomplish that you are pretty clear you wouldn't be able to if you were doing it from resistance? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh yeah, I'm on the verge of opening doors on a yoga studio Tuesday. And so
there's that.
To call it freezing. I would get overwhelmed. I could feel it. I'd get overwhelmed and I would freeze in whatever activity I was doing, whether it was a conversation with somebody or a work task. And now I can take that freezing, which I now know is resistance, and flip it to I'm an overwhelmed, but I've got something here that I can work with to proceed. And nobody so fast now. I can just flip the switch in a conversation with somebody or on the phone, or even standing in person.
Amazing. I mean, what a superpower, right? And that's so empowering. And not only is that supporting you with being able to open up the doors to a yoga studio, but to open up the doors to a yoga studio in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, really, we all just have to take a moment to just bow to you, because this is huge. This is such a big deal. I really can't emphasize it enough. It's a big deal in general, but it's a big deal as a highly sensitive. That overwhelm that you're speaking about and the fact that you're stepping into this is such evidence and shows how much you've really been engaging, in the training process to be able to position yourself and to be ready for this. That is highly sensitive leadership. That is high service. And it's just really absolutely incredible. So share with us what is next for you.
I want to get the doors open to the studio. I've always, I just want to hold safe space for people. My job as a yoga instructor, and especially as a hot yoga instructor, is to keep people safe in the room. And I've gone through my state's mandates. I've created the safest space I think I can. I've got the signs up. I've started the studio with one hospital grade clean air filtration system. And last spring I added another one. So the entire facility has fresh air being pumped into it. And that's my number one thing is I think it's the empathy. I want people to be able to walk in and out of here safely. And it's not 100% guarantee, but I know at the end of the day, I've absolutely done my best. And so I will be here waiting for you if you are ready to come in and practice. I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And that's
amazing. Yeah, so beautiful. I mean, truly, if there's anybody who is really going to succeed or is meant to lead the way in how businesses are run, how corporations are operating as a result of this pandemic, it's us as highly sensitives. And what you just described is such an example of that, to take, again, that strength of empathy, as you mentioned, but also our strength of conscientiousness, right? And really our ability to use our strengths of deep thinking, deep listening and deep feeling, and apply all of that to things such as the safety measures, as you described, and anything else that's needed to be able to operate a business in a new way. We were already doing it in this community pre-pandemic, and now we are leading the way. And again, you are such a beautiful example. So what advice would you have to give for other highly sensitives who are listening to this? Because I know it can be so easy to listen and be like, oh, wow, that Nikki, she's like Wonder Woman, and I would never be able to do that. But I know you, and I know your journey, and I know the blood, the sweat, the tears that have gone into every aspect to bring you to this place. So what advice would you have for others who are wondering, thinking, can I, as a highly sensitive lead, can I, as a highly sensitive, create and bring something into the world that I want to? What would you say to them?
Say, get a community. For years, at the end of my yoga classes, there's a spiritual moment. I have people pray for others. And then at the end, I've always closed my classes from day one with the phrase, "You are never alone." And sometimes I need to be reminded of that. And so I'm reminded of that when I freeze, go into overwhelm, and then know that there's help or support at this point to get me through it. So anybody who's highly sensitive can step out and up. They just need a little bit of help to show up.
So beautiful. You are truly a highly sensitive leader, Nikki. Where can listeners find out more about you and the amazingness of Aware Hot Yoga?
Like I said, I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. On Instagram, it's Aware Hot Yoga NC. On Facebook, Aware Hot Yoga, and the website is awarehotyoga.com.
Beautiful. I definitely recommend, whether you're in North Carolina or not, that you are following Nikki, if for nothing else, inspiration and knowing where you can go for any time when you're traveling through North Carolina, once again, when we are all able to travel, or for anyone who's as close as possible to find your way to Nikki's studio, not only for a yoga practice, but for a spiritual experience, as she said. Nikki, thank you so much. Again, I am just such a fan of you, your determination, your resilience, your journey, and I've loved this conversation with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. I love talking to you as well.
All right, beautiful. Until next time.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Course in Business Miracles. If you're ready to learn how to use your highly sensitive abilities to support you in being purposeful, profitable, and empowered rather than scattered, poor, and undervalued, take my free self-quiz to find out if you are indeed a highly sensitive entrepreneur. And if you are, along with your quiz results, you'll receive my free HSE Success Guide, which will teach you how to have your highly sensitive abilities working for you to create the results you desire in your business. Take the quiz and receive your free success guide now at www.hsequiz.com.